what are the ways that we're going to make our movement into the future where everybody has the maximum amount of benefit? What are the steps for
the greatest good for the greatest number?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, the way you get the greatest good for the greatest number in the first instance is to actually have a state, right? In the sense that everyone counts as one. And then we start calculating, right? We calculate the costs and we calculate the benefits, and then we see how they're distributed across all those individuals. And it seems to me, and the state is the entity that does that, right? That's kind of the mind of the state, is to do that as a collective entity, right? In which case then, if we've got all of these developments coming on board with transhumanism, right, then we have to think about how they are going to be distributed equally to everyone's benefit, right? And not just their individual benefit, but to society's benefit as a whole as well, right? And so it's reasonable to think about, you know, not just people vegetating because they can live forever, but being productive in some very interesting kind of new ways. Because one of the things that I'm concerned about sometimes with transhumanism is it's got a very limited sense of what you're going to do with the rest of your life once it goes on forever. Most transhumanists act as if living forever is a time to be an endless tourist, right? I mean, no, I mean, that's what, right? You could do all the things you never were able to do before, kind of stuff. I said, well, that's not sufficient.
Go to all the planets.
See, but this is the thing. I mean, really. I mean, see, this is where one has to get serious about what's the point of being human, because most of our conceptions of a kind of higher humanity, a humanity 2.0, whether we're, you know, and we go back to the era of the 1960s and 70s, Julian Huxley, Teilhard de Chardin, all these people who were thinking about, you know, humanity going up to the next level. Well, the next level was a collective level where people can do things together in a way they've never been able to do before, right? You end up with new forms of knowledge, new forms of civilization, right? It's not just mooching on the stuff that's already been there that you haven't had time to figure out, right? It's by moving to a new level, new forms, new way of being, right? A species self-transformation of a profound kind, right? This is why I do have a certain amount of sympathy for the kind of more cosmic transhumanists who in some sense think that, you know, we become this cosmic intelligence and all this, you know, the kind of images of superintelligence that tend to go in that direction. I tend to have a certain kind of sympathy for that, because that would kind of make transhumanism worth doing rather than simply just being an indefinite extension, you know, of life as we know it, right? Because that's the thing that I worry about often with these transhumanist, you know, imaginaries of living forever. It really ends up making you look like an endless tourist. And that's not worth it, right? That's, you know, you're just mooching, right? I mean, and this is why I worry about the universal basic income thing too, because in a sense, universal basic income kind of puts you in the mindset, right, that you don't need to work, right? You don't need to.
But again, this is about, again, definition of terms. Work, what is work? It's something that gives you value. Is it something that gives you money? It's, I mean, again, what I was trying to indicate before that I really liked about FM was this recontext. I think you would say recontexting. I mean, I'd say redefinition, but you know, we look at work as, oh, it's a 9-to-5 job. You work at the same company for 50 years, you get a pension. I mean, that's how it was looked at 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That's not how kids talk about work now. I mean, so it is about reconfiguring or reshifting what that means. Is it something that just makes my life interesting? Is it something that rewards me emotionally? Is it something that rewards me intellectually? I mean, these are all things that we have to have, number one, an understanding of. What does it give us? Give us, you know, and then how do we emulate that feeling or that response in a world in the future that is to your point, that is doable.
See, I agree with you, and you have just touched on something that's a kind of an assumption in a way that perhaps again reflecting the fact of where transhumanism comes from historically. I think the reason why transhumanists do very much lapse into this endless tourist mode is because the understanding of work is the 9-to-5 job, right? So in other words, in the kind of in the middle of the 20th century, right, where there became this very sharp distinction, right, where work is this 9-to-5 thing in the office, which is kind of drudgery and so forth, but it pays the bills. And then, you know, you've got this leisure period, which is this radically other thing that happens at home or involves taking holidays or something like that. And this is very middle 20th century kind of way of organizing your life, right? And it seems to me that a lot of the transhumanists, you know, when they start talking about, because Aubrey de Grey, the reason why I say endless tour is because Aubrey de Grey lapses into this when people ask him, what do you do with all this extra time once you're able to live forever? And he does lapse into this, you know, you could visit other planets. You know, this is what he says. And I'm thinking, oh my God, no. But it's the product of an imaginary that it's highly bifurcated. Work, play, radically different places. Hate work, love play, right? However, what you're describing, and I agree with you on this, is that we have to recover a kind of more holistic notion, you know, very much like what I think, you know, artistic people do in a way, right? You know, or scientific people, where in a sense they love their work, right? They love their work and they want to do more of it, and it's very creative, right? And it brings you to new way of looking at things, new ways of understanding the world, new ways of being in the world. And that's what transhumanism ought to be for, right? It ought to be for fostering that, a kind of new sort of productivity that nowadays we think that only scientists and artists have.
Yeah, we're all artists and we can all be scientists,
yeah.
maybe. So last two questions. So you talk about the qualities, which we spent a long time talking about. What, for you, the human qualities, the qualities that make us human, that you would like to, for us to carry forward in whatever being we become, if you know, if we make it, what are those for you?
Well, I mean, I do very much believe in, I do believe in rationality and consciousness and all these. So the qualities themselves, as they've been traditionally defined, are okay with me. I think the aspect, I think the thing that one needs to keep in mind is the openness to multiple embodiments, this thing that's called morphological freedom in transhumanism. I think that's a really important value in a way, because I think that's very much tied to in the political sphere, to our notions of equality, okay? You know, democracy really requires equality, and equality requires that you see things as equal. And that and the things that you see as equal are often differently embodied. So differently embodied humans, right? Men and women, different races, right? All this stuff, right? They're the stumbling blocks of equality because we're not able to actually see them as all being the same. So we don't have a kind of morphologically free notion of equality in politics, you might say, as long as we have racism and sexism and all that, okay? So morphological freedom is already a problem for us. But of course, the thing that you know, and Zoltan, I give Zoltan a lot of credit for really highlighting morphological freedom as a kind of transhumanist Bill of Rights issue, right? He did the transhumanist Bill of Rights when he ran for president in 2016, and he had morphological freedom right on top. And that, I think, that notion of morphological freedom, which is very distinctive to transhumanism, where in a sense you can exist as a cyborg and be human, you can exist in a machine, you can exist in a biological body, right? I mean, there are all these multiple embodiments that you can have. I think that really speaks to the human concern for equality, which underwrites democracy. And so I would really, that is something I would kind of hold on to in a way, because I think when we get into this transhumanist world we're imagining, I think one of the things that we're going to have to be prepared for is for a wider range of embodiments than we can even tolerate now, okay? Because we're going to have humans coming in all forms, all shapes and sizes, all forms, right? Biological, silicon, you name it, in between, right? I mean, people have a hard enough time, dealing with people of different colors. I mean, now look what they're going to have to deal with, right?
Well,
and
not only that, I mean, we've then got, there's so many ethical regulations, thoughts that you're going to have, in terms of just even day to day. Forget about crimes or that kind of thing. Well, I'm going to become like some half centaur, half Meccano set person. I'm going to go here and there, but I do something. Well, who's responsible? I mean, there are so many. There are so many.
Yes.
Ethical and legal questions that have to be answered once we're at that place.
Well, see, I teach this stuff to law students. Okay, so I actually this is why I think about this all the time, because I do think this is what, if you want to talk about an area where transhumanists have yet to do any serious thinking, it's the issue of responsibility, right? The locus of responsibility. Once you're able to be morphologically free, because that our whole normative system, ethics, law, all of that requires some clear locus of responsibility where judgments can be made about people's actions and so forth. So I actually bring all this stuff up in the context of teaching law students, because as I tell the law students, look, you know, we're already beginning to get some cyborg law. There's already cyborg law in some, you know, California, for example. And so we're beginning to see the beginnings of trying to incorporate the transhumanist horizon within the legal system. And it's hard. It's very hard, especially if you take transhumanism, you know, in this full, you know, bodied way that we've been discussing it. But it's something that the lawyers of the future are going to have to actually deal with. You know, but that's right. That's right. This is you know, you're talking about, that's exactly the right thing. And that's what we should be concerned about.